everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Steven Says See or Skip. Apologies for the mid month break I took, but I had a couple things going on and then I was celebrating my birthday. So now we're going to be jumping back in with this review of the movie Colossal. We're going to continue all access August, so this typically would only be available to my free subscribers on Patreon, but this month it's open to everyone. So whether you're listening on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast, please enjoy. And if you want more episodes like this, all you have to do is head on over to Patreon and subscribe by providing them a name and an email address. It's that simple. But anyways, let's jump back into Colossal. It was released on April 21st, 2017, and the story was an interesting one. Colossal follows Gloria, played by Anne Hathaway, an unemployed party girl who gets kicked out of her New York City apartment and moves back to her hometown. While she's trying to figure out her life and honestly trying to figure out herself, reports begin surfacing of a giant creature that is destroying Seoul. Eventually, Gloria realizes the monster is connected to her. I'm not gonna lie, this movie was a tough one for me to rate. I ended up giving it a 5 out of 10, but it was almost a 4. You know, because I love Anne Hathaway so much, and I think she did a good job in this, and the positive message that the movie tries to convey about some of the topics that it's delving into, I felt like giving it a 4 was unfair, but the story is complicated. It has a huge commentary on alcoholism, addiction, and the aftermath of destructive behavior. And then it layers over this idea that people can be connected to a monster across the planet, which kind of means you have to suspend disbelief. The problem is they don't really help us suspend that disbelief, and I think it's because they want to do this big reveal about why it's happening and when it all began later on in the movie. But it was, you know, by the time I got to that point, I was like, yeah, I don't know if I buy this explanation. In addition to that, though, the movie actually has a lot to say about friendship. Like, what is a friend? Is a friend someone who gives you a job? Is a friend someone who gives you what you want? Is a friend someone who doesn't judge you? Or is it possible that a friendship is deeper than that and requires more? The movie wants us to kind of ask these questions. Because initially, I think you're like, yeah, someone who doesn't judge me and gives me a job and gives me what I want. Yeah, that's somebody who's my friend. But in this movie, you see some things happen and it's like, oh, are they friends or are they not friends? I don't know. It was interesting to say the least. The lighting of this movie is so dark and gritty, and it's supposed to be. You know, whether you're dealing with the sadness of being lost, or the fog of not knowing who you are, or that kind of blackout that rolls in when you're drunk and losing control, or that gray bitterness the next morning when you're hungover dealing with the chaos that you may have caused last night. This lighting is dark throughout because all of those experiences themselves are so dark. And I gotta say that there are people who would be completely turned off on this. Maybe because you're going through some similar things and it's hitting too close to home. Maybe because you know someone like this that you had to walk away from for your own health and security. So I could see how someone could watch this and be like, nope, this is way too much. It's way too heavy. And it's when it's an Anne Hathaway movie, people are like, oh, it's going to be fun and light. She's so great. And it's like, she's not afraid to do darker things as well. I mean, I did a review on her in Mother Mary, and she definitely was not a princess in that one. It was a different kind of energy, and she brings that to this as well. I will say that some of the monster sequences in Soul were maybe too dark. It was hard to see what the monster was doing, and I mean, if it weren't for the news report, I don't think I would have known it was in the Soul, because everything was just so dark. And so you're trying to piece together what's happened rather than actually like watching it, if that makes any kind of sense. I did think that the soundtrack and the score was decent and it helped set the move. And there was a really cool score build up for the flashback scene for what was it? Anne Hathaway's character as a kid, Gloria, that kind of explains the situation and the circumstance. I won't give it away if you haven't seen it, but if you have, you know what I'm talking about. The sets and costumes, pretty basic. But when you're talking drunks in a bar and, a rundown, beat up watering hole, you've got a basic template to work from, and it's smart to go with the grain rather than against it. Anne Hathaway, as always, is so talented. I think she played the party girl convincingly. Jason Sudeikis, he's not my favorite actor in general, but I thought he did a good job here playing the part of Oscar. I would be interested in seeing Oscar recast. Someone who might have gone a little deeper with the character. Sorry, Jason. I just think somebody else could have maybe given it a different kind of energy. I did feel like the character, like Joel's part was supposed to be bigger. Because he was friends with Oscar and kind of meets Gloria, and I think wants to be her friend, wants to connect with her. But I'm wondering if maybe Austin Stowell like had scheduling issues, or he couldn't carry some of the scenes, and so they cut some of his part down because he's kind of there, but he doesn't. He's kind of off in the wings, and yet he's still around for a couple pivotal moments. So I don't know. I just felt like there was something missing. Oh, and then Dan Stevens. Guys might recognize him from Downton Abbey. It was great seeing him, even though he only has a little brief part in the beginning, the middle, and the end. So don't get too excited about him. It was hard for me to pick a favorite moment because the content was so like intense. And it's why I like the moment where Gloria wants to apologize for her actions as the monster. And the apology works. I didn't see that coming, but I found it moving that an apology can be effective even when dealing with death and destruction halfway across the planet. So many people don't apologize anymore because it's not their fault. Instead, they blame someone else or they provide excuses for why it's not their fault. And so I just like seeing someone, one, apologize, and two, that apology resonates with the individuals who receive it. In terms of like pop culture and fun facts, the movie got described as Godzilla meets Lost in Translation, and I think that works if you've seen either movie. Imagine merging those two movies together, and you might be like, that'd be a weird movie. Colossal's a little weird. So, the product goes the way it goes. As Gloria is exiting the cab, the phone number starts with the area code 603. That's all of New Hampshire. So we kind of get a sense of where she's gone after she's left New York. And I thought it was interesting that Anne Hathaway made this movie while she was in her second trimester. And she's actually stated in an interview that it's one of her most underrated films and that she's really proud of it. So I thought that was interesting that she kind of sees the value in this film, even though it was not some big box office success, and I don't think it got a lot of critical acclaim. In terms of what a therapist would say about this movie, well, I think they could fill a notepad, not just because of the dysfunctional relationships or the addiction, but also because there's a commentary going on about how audiences process mass tragedies from across the globe in the comfort of their own homes. And that's something that Nacho Vigalondo was exploring, and he talks about that in an interview about the movie. I don't know. This movie was tough for me because so much of my self worth is tied up in working that when someone gives me a job, even though they didn't give it to me, I applied and I was qualified. I always think highly of that individual. But it made me wonder, what if this person's encouraging bad behavior? What if they're manipulating me? What if they're using the job to try to control me? At what point does someone stop being a hero in your life and turn into a villain? And I think we see that play out with Gloria and Oscar. I do wonder what a therapist would have said about how Gloria chose to confront Oscar. Would they have encouraged a more traditional confrontation via communication and collaboration, or would a therapist have applauded how Gloria chose to handle Oscar? Check out the film and you can decide for yourself. Oh, and I think therapists would love the whole childhood trauma angle. Everything traces back to childhood in a lot of therapists' minds. But I did wonder if it was true. Is all our brokenness rooted in our childhood, or can trauma be absent in our childhood and still show up later because of something completely unrelated? For Dog Watch, no dogs found, but honestly, between the alcoholics, the destructive monster, and robot, it's probably for the best. In terms of the content, no sex, no real drugs, a lot of alcohol, and a decent amount of violence. It is rated R, so keep in mind this isn't Anne Hathaway and Princess Diaries. It's more Anne Hathaway, Brokeback Mountain. It's not family friendly at all unless your kids are super into alcoholism, monsters, and robots. If so, then game on. I would encourage you to see this if you're interested in addiction, how people deal with it, and if you're curious about the monster connection concept. I would say to skip it if you're looking for something funny or if you prefer Godzilla style monster movies. Don't forget to subscribe for free on Patreon if you want to hear reviews like this after All Access August ends on August 31st. Reminding you, Collosal, 5 out of 10. This is Steven with Steven Says See or Skip, signing off with the question: if you found out you could control an 80-foot tall monster, what would you do?